Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Monette and this is my channel, Evolve with Monette. I am a professional intuitive empath and chef, as well as an all-around life path 3. And today we are going to get into something that I saw in the comment section that I thought would be great to flesh out. There's also a great tip I want to give you guys today about release letters. And release letters are the letters that we write to sometimes just general people in our lives, but I would suggest that if you are dealing with narcissistic abuse, that you might try a release letter to your narcissist. Now, one of the things that this will help to facilitate is, first of all, formulating the idea of what the relationship was. The second thing that this will help to facilitate is understanding exactly what steps or why the abuse is so egregious and you need to let it go, and then what steps you would need to take. The third thing comes purely from an empath's perspective. What I want you guys to understand is that we have a responsibility to manifest and that we're always creating with our thought patterns, right? So, what I know for a fact is that when we create or we think about something, we are seeking that energy out, like attracts like, and we're pulling it in. Now, in one of my previous videos, I did talk about you're not a bad person and hence the reason you attracted this narcissist in. That is not the case. But there is a situation where you are having to unlearn some thought patterns or some tapes that are playing within the relationship or within your head. We all have tapes playing in our head. We've heard everybody talk about this from Oprah on down to every single therapist. The tapes. What are the tapes that we play? What are the things that we say to ourselves? Well, I also know that when we do these release letters, what it will help you to do is to let go of a relationship in your mind first, and then you can start to envision it in a physical plane. So I will read to you. I would love to share with you a release letter I wrote to my narc many, 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 many years ago, long before I really was strong enough to break the pattern of abuse and to break the cycle. Now, the reason that I thought of this, it's because I was checking out the comments and I saw Tell Samira. She had a wonderful comment under the narcissist best friend video about how narcissists are incredibly charming and how narcissist relationships mimic those of romantic abusive relationships. So Tell Samira, if you are watching, and if I said your name right and I didn't butcher it, thank you so much for that feedback. I thought, what a valid point. Narcissists are incredibly charming, and that is why we have a hard time disassociating when the abuse becomes beyond toxic and we can no longer handle it. So what we're dealing with is somebody who is so able to pull you in that it's disarming. So I was praying about this, and one of the things that came up for me years ago, because I understood that we write things out. I'm a writer, and I write into existence the life that I would like to live. And I understood that I needed to let go of her, but I was still very romantically attached to her. Now, my narcissist and I were not lovers, it was a completely platonic friendship. But the point that Samira has about narc relationships mirroring those of romantics, no lies are told here. And I think that that's something that's a little bit taboo that we are afraid to talk about because we think, well, what does that make us? Did I bleed the lines? Am I just a person having some crazy lesbian affair if you're a woman? Am I just a person having some crazy affair in my head, or there's something happening that I didn't even realize? No, that is not the situation. But I think that narcissists do sexualize themselves and know how to charm anybody, not just you. So there's nothing wrong with you. They can charm everybody. They charm their bosses, they charm their potential spouses, they charm their mailmen. If they need to extract an energy from you or anybody around you, they will charm and they will exercise that ability to kind of have you under a spell. So, one of my suggestions for breaking the cycle, if you are in a relationship, as I've had some other comments and some other viewers say to me, I want to get out of this. I just don't know how. I identified I'm an empath. I've identified that this is an issue for me, but I don't know how to break out of it. I would advise crafting a release letter. So, this release letter is written in interesting ways. Okay, so I wrote this sitting at my desk when I was in corporate America on my lunch break many years ago because my narc out of the blue popped up after one of our periods of separation and all of that. If you've ever had a narc, you know how that goes. So I will start. So many years spent minding my words and trying to curtail yours. I was wrong. And I'm going to go in as we're reading this letter and just kind of break this apart. What was I wrong about? How many of you can relate to trying to stop your narcissist from becoming toxic to others, having to explain your narcissist and their behavior to regular people that are like, what on earth is going on here? There is a celebrity that reminds me very much of my narcissist. I think I'm going to make a separate video of that. The initials start with A and S. If you guys are familiar, I will go into that in another video. But that celebrity and my narcissist remind me of the person that you have to introduce and you have to make allowances for and excuses for before your friend group, the rest of your regular friend group anyway, meets that narcissist. So I said so many years trying to mind my words, watch what I said, and trying to curtail yours. I was wrong. And in the end, growth meant to stop my speech and the way I had for infinite years, denying my truth, my anger, my needs. Embarrassed to rock the boat. But there was no captain on the boat. The ship left attended began to cannibalize himself. The ship left unattended, began to cannibalize itself. So desperate was my soul and spirit to get in communication with me that it began to threaten. A menacing teacher, looming in the periphery, whispering doom, the tumor in my throat. And that's a real thing that happened to me. I am a speaker and a teacher, and so my throat, this voice box matters so much to not only my livelihood, but my creative expression. And I developed a tumor, small. When I went to the ENT, he was like, this is nothing. We don't even understand it. We tested it. It's not cancerous. It was just a warning signal from my body that I was in a toxic situation. And I had been closing off throat chakra. Anyway, another video upcoming on that, opening throat chakra, clearing it, especially if you've had narcissist abuse. Throat chakra, I can promise you, has been affected. So we'll get into that at another time. But the tumor in my throat, and then the dam broke. At that point, peaceful conveying of information would not do. Pele had erupted, and I spewed what I held. Now, Pele, for those of you that are not familiar, is essentially a goddess here, and it represents volcanic energy, strong energy coming to the fore, and it represents the ability to tell the truth and not being able to hold back anymore. Can you guys see that? So Pele had erupted in me, meaning all of the things I had pushed down with this narcissist, I could no longer push down. So Pele had erupted, and I spewed what I held. What I observed, felt, knew, and feared, all of it forcefully clanging forth in chunky, awkward, noisy bits. I spoke until I was empty. And in the end, I missed you still. Guys, that's me being vulnerable. Now, imagine, too, that this is me prior to separating from my narc many years ago. This was written almost 2 years before the real, like, disassociation and connection, or about a year and a half or so before that. But in the end, I missed you still. So what this was one of the typical discards of the narc, and I had written this after a discard to give you better perspective, okay? Miss the cycle, miss the abuse, the everything. That is a nod to Tell Samira, who said the abuse is intoxicating and alluring and it pulls you in. You hadn't shown up for me time and time again. Flowers from both of our others. I comment, I praise and uplift and declare your worth. No reply from you. Check your text, your words cutting me to the softest part of my soul. Words pregnant with vulgarity, dripping with curse. What was shocking was the little thought I had of myself to remain your friend after that comment. Reconciliation is out of the question, I said with my heart heavy and full of regret, wishing I could go back instantly. But I knew that a friendship would look different now. I won't tolerate shit from you or from me. And shit from you is definitely out of the question. Show up for me. Celebrate me. Feed me love, not just cake, in the shadows as sabotage. Yes, that is something that she would do whenever I was dieting, as I was perpetually and still am. she would purposely want to sabotage, especially if she saw me getting too skinny. There were a lot of comments about that. And skinny is something I have not been, ladies and gentlemen, but her perception, if she could see a shift, she would try to alter that. Do this and I can do the same, but no one, not a single person needs a frenemy. No one but a naive student, and I have learned my lesson. Now, there is why I advise these release letters, because in that, I was just putting words together. It was a stream of consciousness. This was written in one fell swoop without editing. And what I will tell you is that that line there, I have learned my lesson, was my soul speaking to me and saying, you must stand up for yourself here. You must be your own advocate. You must use this throat chakra that is clean and cleared from the ENT, removing the tumor, and you must save yourself. And that is something that I spoke into existence. That's something that moves into the future. In the meantime, I started to reflect on all of the things that were happening around us that made me nostalgic for her. And I said, I am about to drain the last of the tide you gave me. Now, that was a fun thing that she did. She was a couponer and she would have access to bulk stuff and she would share with me. That was a nice thing that my narc did to give me a little bit of, energy sometimes. And it was a silly thing, but I associated it with her. And I said, I'm about to drain the last of the tide you gave me, symbolic of nourishing, nostalgia, messy endings, and clean slate beginnings. The night before you called, I dreamt of you. Remember how we started this conversation, folks? I said that there had been a discard and that we had separated, and then she popped up and called at my job. So I'm sitting at my desk and it was kind of a shock. So the night before you called, I dreamt of you. And I believe this too. If you're an empath, you're in tune with these emotions, you have a heads up that this is going to happen. Usually you start thinking or dreaming about the narc. So let's talk about that in another video. We sat laughing, you on a ledge, on a sunlit porch, me on the floor, crafting in the warmth. We two sending beams of joy and laughter into the atmosphere. I was so happy in that dream. We were us. Well, the us that I'd always idealized we could be. What's the difference between the dream and the reality of the narc, guys? Tell me in the comments below, what's the difference between the dream and the reality of your narc interaction? I was so happy in that dream. And when I woke, you called and I was shaken. I needed time. The tease of you out of focus and grainy in my sleep was easy for me to process. Just my soul releasing a memory of a dearly loved one who was never any good for me. And I said, as a finale, the message you left was your reality. Come to life, everything you can be. Bullying, surprising, effervescent, moving, shallow, generous, superfluous, stubborn. And still, I could not force myself to reconnect. Guys, I promise you, when you step away from your narc, you will have the ability to disconnect fully. You will find yourself, you will rediscover yourself in leaps and bounds. The further away you get, the better your life gets, because the low level energy, and I'm speaking as an empath and an intuitive, that low level energy dissipates. And what I want to tell you is that you have the power to free yourself. And if you're needing a tool, I highly suggest that you start with this, a release letter. You owe it to yourself, you owe it to your future self, and you owe it to your past abuse self. Come on back and we will continue to evolve together.